Okay, so I'll make a little presentation of the SharpStitch UI. Let's see some of the capabilities, like making a simple image processing workflow. So I'll take some sample image, say image processing, here's one, and I'll go to SharpStitch projects folder and make a folder for our demo called Kenny. So since I will be making some edge detection, so here we have one image file, and now start the SharpStitch UI project from Visual Studio. Alright, so we start by making new project. Basically, the UI so far can only work with opening and editing SharpStitch project. It doesn't allow running them. Okay, so this is the editor. The most important part is setting the workflow. So I'll choose Imaging Factory, and this has two workflows. I want the default one, the image processing, and here are the settings for the workflow. It's a collection, so I have a collection editor. I can add default item, which is this, and I want Kenny edge detector item, and each item can be further edited, like it can have its own settings, which I can play with. But so far I leave it at defaults and look at other settings. Then I can select inputs for the projects. So I'll just pick this one image I have. I can add multiple image files. I can use masks like wildcard for when I have like multiple images represented by a single line. So here I have the file edit. It has absolute path, and this is how it looks on the command line. So this is the command line preview. As you can see, it's already quite cluttered, so it's pain to edit manually, hence the need for some editor. And the input path can be shortened. I will be fine with relative path, so this path will be added as a relative. As you can see, it now points to this Kenny \input JPEG, and the path is relative to the project file, which is now the default directory. I will save the project here in that folder with the input image, and I can save the project as either XML, which is the stitch file, or as command line. And the benefit of command line is, of course, I can run it right from the Explorer. So I'll save the project, but to make it work I have to specify outputs and also the command line app I want to use. So I can have absolute path or relative path to the command line app, or even short form in case I have this in a path variable or something. So let's use absolute, for example, and locate the command line app, the latest build, which is in my solution folder here. And now let's specify the output. So the output will be a single file. By the way, this editor is generated dynamically based on the type of workflow. So if the workflow is more complex and allows like storing specific objects, there will be an extra group box. So let's save the image in output JPEG file. Use the JPEG file format and say the quality will be 77, for example. There are more options, like I can downscale the image or resize them. JPEG is of course just 8-bit, but some formats like JPEG extended range or TIFF allow higher bit depths, but I'm okay with JPEG for now. And this is basically it. So I will save the project, and now here is the command line. So let's start it. Okay, and now you see the output generated. Here it is, just some Canny edge detector output. Now let's see what we can do more about this. Let's say I want to change the command line. Right now, if I use Notepad or some text editor, does it have wrap? It's quite tedious to modify command line by hand, especially if there are multiple nested settings and so on, lots of braces. So let's just open it in SharpStitch. Now I can open the project as command line, it's not a problem. And let's play with the Canny edge detector. So for example, I'll change some values, like lower the high threshold and low threshold, say, to this. And these editors are also generated dynamically based on the setting type. These are numeric settings. This is enum setting, so I have just a number of values I can choose from, and some are Boolean, for example. So these are yes, no, true, false. Okay, and now you can see, you can't see, that's probably an issue. Okay, let's look at on something else we can do with this processing. I can specify how many cores I want to use, whether I want to use parallel processing, whether I want to benchmark. So yeah, I want to benchmark this project, and I don't want parallel processing because I want to see how it goes on a single core, what is the single core performance. And I want to log the outputs in XML file, and I will also want to debug the project. So I can set up debugging so to some level. Say I want to debug everything, every class that allows this at this level, but for now I'm interested with just the Canny edge detector. So I'll turn off the debugging. I set the debugging folder to this relative path and select the specific class, Canny edge detector, and I want verbose debugging. So I hope now the command line will be updated. Yes. So here are the settings and debugging options, processing options. As you can see now, the command line is really cluttered. So I'm really glad I have a way to comfortably edit it using UI. So let's add some extra processing step like brightness contrast, and we'll decrease contrast by say 44% something. Here's also an XML preview. This is how the project looks in the Stitch format. It's not really human readable, but it's a simple XML format having a schema. And SharpStitch has actually a document object model for the project, so it can be stored in XML, command line, and other formats if needed. Say we want JSON output, it's possible. So let's save the command line and try to rerun it with the new settings. Now you see some benchmarking here happening, and the output. So now you see there are more edges detected because we changed the settings, and the image is darker because we have extra step by decreasing brightness. Fine. Here are some debugging output we generated. So it shows how the algorithm progresses. So here's the input image converted to grayscale, normalized, then Gaussian filtering to remove high frequency noise, computing image gradient, this is magnitudes, basically simple edge detection, and also gradient orientation. Now next step of canny edge detection is non-maximal suppression, so we choose only edges that are local maxima in their respective orientation. Then we filter, we use double thresholding. These are the values I've been playing with, choosing like strong edges and the weak ones, and then we connect the strong edges to make a higher connectivity, and then discard the weak ones, and this is the result. So standard algorithm, we can debug it this way by seeing the outputs. And I can also debug this in Visual Studio. So if I want, I can just copy this command line in its entirety, and then just set this command line app as a startup project, and in project properties I just copy the command line here. So this is the way you can debug the stitching. Of course you have to set the working directory to the respective one if you use relative paths here. Okay, so that's basically it. That's what you can do with UI for now. There are some more settings and options like temporary settings. If the workflow uses temp folder, you can locate it, where the temp folder can be, and buffer size and so on. There is more you can do with the inputs. You can use different kinds of sorting. You can preload the images in memory if needed, and of course you can use wildcards with or setting index, for example, if you have workflows like image blending, which is in the stitching thing here. It just takes two images that are blended together. So then we want to specify which image is the left one, which is the right one, so we want to attach indices to them so they can be reordered without flipping the sides. So this is again the settings generated, mostly numeric ones. Some have textual numeric editor. There are even very complex settings, like in panoramic stitching we have, I guess, yeah, the settings can be nested, of course. So for example, feature detector has feature filters, which are steps to remove excessive number of features. We can add multiple filters in sequence. Say for example I want maximum filter, which simply takes the best n features, the strongest ones. So we want up to, say, 1000 features. Here are more elaborate algorithms like suppression by discovering or adaptive non-maximal suppression and so on. Of course I can set this to default. And let's see the more complex features like mask estimator. This is actually a dictionary. It has a collection editor where the item is actually key value pair. So I can add one item. This is a default one. It has a key and a value, and the key is actually a flex enum, so it has multiple flags. It can have multiple flags, and as you can see, the editor has validation. So if I make something illegal, it's shown in a tooltip. So I can have like this one, and I add one more, and now again there's a problem. I have duplicate keys, so I have to change this to something else, and say use a different estimator, and this one doesn't have any settings, so it's just a key value pair. This one has some settings. This is probably a bug, so doesn't matter. Yeah, this is the numeric editor with slider, with nips, and yeah, that's it, basically it. There are a couple of editors for basic types. Some editors don't have, some settings don't have an editor yet, like this complex setting. So in these cases, I have general editor, which allows you to work with how to put it, the standard format that is used in command line. So SharpStitch already knows how to parse this, and it also knows how to say, let's write something bad here. Yeah, it doesn't validate yet. Oh, no problem. And this is the XML preview of the setting. So this is a peek under the hood, and that's basically it. So we've seen how to set up a project, how to test it, and how to play with different high-level settings like modifying the processing, logging, debugging the project. Okay, that's it. If you have any questions, write me on Slack so we can discuss it, and I hope you'll be able to play with it more from now. Thanks for watching.